My name is Paula Davis, but almost everyone calls me Paula. I'm 33 years old, and I've finally learned how to keep my hands still under a white tablecloth, how to let a cruel sentence finish without rescuing it with a smile. The restaurant loved low light and high prices, and my parents loved that combination even more. The linen was crisp, the crystal unforgiving. It was their anniversary. I'd made the reservation like always. I'd told myself I would be gracious, say congratulations, and leave early. I'd rehearsed neutrality the way other people practice violin. But neutrality evaporates when your sister raises a flute of champagne and says, bright as a chandelier, here's to the family letdown who still believes she matters. The table laughed. My mother didn't even try to soften it. The laugh she gave was full and real, the kind she saved for other people's clumsy falls. My father watched his water glass, studying the ring it left on the tablecloth, as if the spill would explain me to him. I sipped coffee and said nothing. Silence is not surrender. It's a fuse. I had promised myself I wouldn't pick up the bill tonight, not with my hands or with my dignity. But the money was never the point. The point was the posture. In my family, generosity had calcified into obligation, and obligation into identity. I was not a daughter. I was an account. When the check came, it landed in front of me out of habit, the server's hand pausing like muscle memory. I watched it rest there and didn't reach. I had already made a decision before dessert, a decision that hummed beneath my skin like live wire. Weeks earlier, my parents' dream home had been approved by the bank on a condition: my signature as guarantor. Just formality, my sister had said, pushing the pen across the page. We could never do this without you. The sentence had felt sticky. I signed anyway. Tonight, sweetness turned sour, and I finally recognized the taste. The drive home was a straight shot through amber streetlights, the kind that make everything look a little kinder than it is. My phone buzzed with a message from Ethan, my boyfriend. Nothing wild, I hope. Text me when you're back. I nearly told him I was fine, that it was the usual paper cuts. Instead, I pulled into my apartment lot and sat in the car until the radio station switched songs and the clock clicked to 9:11. The second hand sounded like footsteps. Inside, I took out the folder I kept too close to my desk: mortgage copies, the bank officer's card, the email printouts. I stared at my name, Paula Davis, and thought about how easily it became a lever in other people's hands. Then I picked up the phone. The bank's night branch was a quiet room with bright lights and pens chained to counters. A woman with tired kindness in her eyes reviewed my file. Yes, she said. You can withdraw as guarantor, Ms. Davis. It requires a signature here, here, and here. The pen scratched. The sound was surgical. She gave me a carbon copy. I folded it with care, usually reserved for letters I wanted to keep. I thanked her for staying late. She shrugged, like this was just paperwork. For me, it was a door locking. The satisfying click. I didn't text my family. I didn't send a monologue about respect or a lecture about gratitude. I wanted the truth to arrive the way I had always received theirs, without warning. Sleep found me the way weather finds a window, tapping first, then insisting. When it broke at 8:40 a.m. My phone lit like an alarm panel. Dad. The first call bled into the second into the 5th, then the 12th, then the 19th, a procession of red digits crawling across the screen like ants. On the 39th attempt, I answered. He didn't say hello. The bank called, he said, the words stiff, like he'd wrapped them in righteousness. You need to fix it. There is a very small, private joy in not explaining yourself. I'm working, I said, and put the phone down with the same care I'd used to fold the carbon copy. By 9:06, a text from my sister. You've really screwed us over. I looked at the sentence until it emptied itself of sense. Then I locked my screen and turned to the spreadsheet on my laptop, the one I keep for work and the world. I am good at networks, human and otherwise. I can see where the current leaves a system, where it returns, and how to close a circuit. Families are just networks that pretend they aren't. At 1:03 p.m., my mother called. She didn't start with the loan. She never starts with the thing. She circles the thing, draping it in stories and good people and how tired everyone is. Your father hasn't touched his breakfast, she said. He's been pacing. He's not himself. We're family, Paula. We don't do this to each other. We. The smallest big word in the world. I have to finish something, I said, refusing the ladder she'd lowered into the old well. I ended the call before she could weaponize breakfast into virtue. By late afternoon, Uncle Dean appeared on my screen, a rare comet. He tried to sound easy, all chuckle and weather, then drifted to the point. Maybe I could smooth this over, just for now, just to be kind. I told him I was fresh out of smooth. He pivoted to legacy and reputation. I hung up before we started chiseling on the same old headstone. That evening, I stood at my kitchen counter and read the receipts of the last 5 years, the way you read a stranger's diary. Curious, then appalled by your own patience. 3 bailouts of my sister's credit card debt. Roof repairs after my parents forgot what insurance actually does. A bridge for my father's medical bills that turned into a highway. Not once a thank you big enough to cover the check. Always the assumption that I would reach for my wallet like a reflex. Ethan called. You good? I'm not a storm anymore, I said. I'm the levee. He was quiet for a long breath, then, keep everything in writing. Screenshot. Dates. Times. I already am. I stared at my notebook. At the top of the page, I wrote 8:40 and drew a small square around it. Not a box to check, an altar to remember. 2 days from now, there will be a grocery store aisle with my parents waiting at the end of it, practice faces, and a manila folder. 3 days from now, a cousin I barely know will tell me I am tearing the family fabric. 5 days from now, my sister will wedge her foot in my front door, and I will close it anyway. But tonight belongs to the sensation of paper giving under ink, to the clean knowledge that I have removed my name from their house and returned it to my own. Outside, a siren passed somewhere I couldn't see. Inside, a small room filled with the sound of my breath, even and unafraid. My sister once said I would never follow through. She had mistaken silence for softness. She had mistaken softness for surrender. I rinsed my coffee mug and watched the suds slip down the basin. A simple truth landed, as gentle as it was irreversible. I can love people and not fund them. I can grieve a family I never had and still refuse to mortgage myself to the one I do. The phone did not ring again that night. I turned it face down and let the dark come in. Somewhere, a spreadsheet closed. Somewhere else, the light in a bank office clicked off, and a file with my name on it moved from one tray to another. In the morning, at 8:40, a storm would knock. I had already decided I would not open the door. By the next morning, my silence had turned into bait. They mistook it for hesitation, not decision. That's the thing about boundaries. People who benefit from your lack of them always assume you're bluffing. The first to circle back was my sister Brianna. Her number flashed on my phone mid-afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity can be a dangerous weakness. Hey, she said, her tone too bright, too staged. About the other night. I've been thinking. Maybe we both said things we didn't mean. We both? I hadn't said a word. I mean, she continued, if you could just sign the papers again, we can forget all this. Mom's worried sick. Dad barely slept. There it was. Not an apology. A transaction dressed as remorse. Brianna, I said calmly, you made a toast. You laughed. And now you're asking for a favor. Which part am I supposed to forget first? Silence. Then a sharp inhale. You're seriously going to ruin everything over one joke? One joke has a mortgage behind it. And I hung up. I sat in that silence for a long while, tracing the pattern I already knew too well. Humiliate, guilt trip, request, repeat. The family choreography never changed. Only the tempo did. That night, Ethan came over after work. He's the kind of man who doesn't fill the room with noise. He fills it with calm. He handed me takeout, no questions at first. When I finally told him what happened, he didn't try to fix it. He just listened, eyes steady, voice low. You're doing what you should have done years ago, he said. Don't explain, just document. Already started, I said, flipping my notebook open. Each name, each date, each call had a small symbol beside it, a map of emotional warfare. 2 days later, my mother called again. She didn't go straight for the guilt this time. She started with weather, groceries, then slipped in. Your father had to cancel his golf membership. We're cutting back on everything, Paula. You have no idea how humiliating this is. I do, I said softly. I was there when you humiliated me at dinner. The pause on the line was heavy, sticky, offended. We're family. You don't talk to your mother like that. We're family, I repeated. And you don't toast your daughter like that. She exhaled sharply, and I could almost hear the shift, her trying to regain the higher ground. You've changed. Yes, I said. That's the point. The next day, the siege grew legs. Uncle Dean called again, pretending to check in about my work, dropping hints about how much your parents did for you. My cousin Michelle texted about how everyone's talking and how sad Mom looked. They were coordinating now, a relay of concern, emotional warfare disguised as compassion. By Friday, even Aunt Nora, who hadn't spoken to me since high school graduation, called to tell me she'd been praying for me to find forgiveness. I didn't have the heart to tell her forgiveness isn't the same as access. Ethan found me that evening sitting on the floor beside a growing stack of printouts, bank forms, call logs, old text messages. They're escalating, he said quietly. They'll corner you soon. Grocery store, maybe your place. He was right. The next afternoon, I went to the market across town. I thought I could outrun coincidence. I couldn't. There they were, my parents, by the produce section, both holding a manila folder. Mom's face was already performing sorrow. Paula, she began, stepping forward. Please, we can't live like this. We've been up all night. The bank. Dad cut in, voice low but firm. Just sign again. They'll reinstate everything. Nobody has to know. I stood perfectly still. You're right. Nobody has to know, because I'm not signing. Dad's jaw flexed. You're being influenced. Someone's poisoning you against your own family. The accusation landed like déjà vu. Whenever I refused to bend, they conjured an outside villain, some friend, some job, some boyfriend corrupting the good daughter. I looked him straight in the eye. No one's poisoning me, Dad. I just stopped drinking the family Kool-Aid. His eyes darkened, and for a second I saw not a father, but a man who'd lost his leverage. Mom's voice trembled, rehearsed heartbreak dripping through it. You'll regret this when we're gone. I've been regretting it while you're still here, I said, and walked away. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. Blocked calls, unknown numbers, texts from relatives quoting morality and bloodlines. The old script. Guilt as currency. I muted every thread. By Sunday morning, they shifted strategy. Soft manipulation became social shame. A cousin posted a vague Facebook status about family betrayal and selfish daughters. My inbox filled with messages like, how could you do this to your parents? They wanted me to feel exposed. They didn't realize I was already past embarrassment. Ethan sent a single text. Every time they push, it means your boundary's holding. Don't flinch. I screenshotted it and pinned it on my notes page. By evening, my apartment felt like a fortress. Quiet, steady, mine. I brewed tea, turned off notifications, and let their words evaporate. But before I went to bed, one thought circled back. They weren't going to stop at calls. They'd find the next weak point, money. And I knew exactly where they'd look first. That old emergency account I'd opened for them years ago. A shared key I had forgotten to take back. Tomorrow I'd close it. No more open doors, no more polite sieges. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. It was that kind of morning where the air itself feels suspicious. Quiet, but too quiet, like the world is holding its breath. I made coffee, opened my banking app, and stared at the small line that had become a noose. Joint Family Emergency Fund. Once that name had meant safety. Now it just meant access. Theirs, not mine. The balance wasn't high, but the withdrawals told the story. $147. Emergency groceries. $238. Unexpected car repair. $92. Kids' recital outfits. $189. Just until payday. Over and over. Always under $300. Always small enough to slip under confrontation. I stared at the numbers and whispered to no one. Death by decimals. At 9:12 a.m., I drove to the bank, the same one where I'd removed my signature from the mortgage. The woman at the counter recognized me, smiled politely, and asked, "Back so soon, Ms. Davis?" "Yes," I said. Different kind of cleanup this time. It took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to end a decade of quiet theft. The teller slid a printed form toward me. "Do you want to keep the joint account open just in case?" I almost laughed. "No, I want it closed permanently." She nodded, tapped her keyboard, and said the sentence I'd been waiting to hear. Balance transferred, account closed. I thanked her, took the receipt, and walked out feeling 10 pounds lighter. But the calm didn't last. At 7:03 a.m. the next day, my phone lit up. Mom. Her voice came through sharp, already vibrating with accusation. "Why is the account empty, Paula? Do you have any idea what you've done to us?" "Yes," I said evenly. "For once I do. You've made things harder than they needed to be. We needed that money this week." "For what?" I asked. "Another emergency dinner at that seafood place?" There was a pause. Then the voice went soft, that brittle softness I'd heard since childhood. "Sweetheart, it was supposed to be family money." "It was," I said, "until family meant everyone but me." I ended the call. 2 hours later, there was a knock at my door. Not the polite kind, the persistent kind. When I looked through the peephole, I froze. Brianna, my sister. Hair messy, face tight, clutching a folder like it contained her last breath. I cracked the door an inch. "You shouldn't be here." She didn't even say hello. She shoved the folder forward. "Just sign it, Paula. Please, this is getting ridiculous." "What's in it?" "The mortgage reapplication. If you sign again, we can move on. Mom's been crying nonstop. Dad's blood pressure's through the roof." "So you brought me medical guilt and paperwork," I said. Very on brand. "Don't be dramatic. It's just one signature." "One? I've signed enough papers for all of you to build an empire." Her jaw clenched. "You think you're better than us now?" "No," I said quietly. "Just freer." I started to close the door. That's when she did it. Slid her foot forward, wedging it in the gap. "You're not walking away from this family, Paula." "I'm not walking away," I said, eyes level with hers. "You're dragging the family where I refuse to go." I pushed the door. She held for a moment, then pulled her foot back at the last second, letting it slam shut. Her voice came muffled through the wood. "When Mom finds out you slammed the door on me..." "She'll probably call the police," I said under my breath, "and tell them it's about respect." By that night, the phone started again. Cousins, uncles, aunts, I barely remembered. One even left a voicemail saying, "You've gone too far, Paula. They're your parents." Ethan came over after work, found me sitting on the floor surrounded by printouts and unopened texts. He leaned on the doorframe and just watched me breathe. "They'll weaponize pity next," he said. "They already have." I pointed to one message on my screen, from my sister. A photo of her kids, smiling. The caption read, "They miss you. Please don't let them suffer for your stubbornness." I set the phone face down. "She's using her children like human invoices." Ethan crouched beside me. "You could change your number." "I could," I said, "but I want to see how far they'll go." He studied my face. "Why?" "Because I've lived my whole life reacting. I want to witness them this time. No more denial, just evidence." That night, I created a folder on my desktop called Closure. Every message, voicemail, and screenshot went in it. Each labeled, time-stamped, dated. At midnight, a new text came in from an unknown number. "You think you're safe behind that apartment door? Blood finds you." I stared at it for a moment, heart steady. The phrasing was wrong for my mother, too dramatic for my father. It had my sister written all over it. I didn't reply. I just added it to the folder. Evidence. The next morning, I went to the grocery store across town. Again. Different aisle, same feeling. My phone buzzed. "Ethan. You okay?" "Fine," I texted back. "They'll run out of ways to find me soon." But I was wrong. That evening, when I pulled into my apartment lot, my stomach tightened. There, leaning against my car, was Dad, and in the passenger seat of his car, Mom, holding that same manila folder. I stopped the engine, but didn't get out. I knew the scene before it started. They'd already rehearsed it. Dad approached my window, his voice calm in that unsettling way that always came before he lost his temper. "The bank gave us 3 days to save the house, Paula. We can't do this without you." Mom opened the folder, her voice trembling. "Just sign here. We'll handle the rest. No one has to know." I rolled the window down an inch. "You're right," I said softly. "No one will know, because I'm not signing." Dad leaned closer, his voice dropping to a threat. "You'll regret this. You've let that man," he spat the word like poison, "turn you against your family." I didn't flinch. "Ethan doesn't tell me what to do. You did. For 30 years. He blinked, the sentence landing harder than he expected. I put the car in reverse and pulled out, leaving them in the rear-view mirror. 2 silhouettes holding papers that would never have my name again. When I got home, there was something wedged under my apartment door, an unmarked envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter from Brianna. At first glance, it looked like an apology. But tucked between the folds was a receipt from a luxury resort in Florida. 2 rooms, one under my sister's name, one under my parents'. The total? $6,482. The date? 2 weeks ago. 3 days after Mom had cried about not affording groceries. I stared at it, feeling the heat rise, not from anger, but from clarity. It had never been about survival, it was about control. They didn't want help, they wanted ownership. I placed the receipt on my desk, next to the letter, next to the closed account notice. The evidence was stacking up like bricks. And tomorrow, I was going to build a wall. By sunrise, the Florida receipt lay on my desk like a verdict. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my sister's careful handwriting, the fake contrition between her loops and curves. Let's just move on, sign again, and we can forget all this. Forget? I whispered the word out loud. Forgetting was their family currency. Spend, erase, repeat. But I wasn't buying it anymore. At 8 o'clock a.m., I called the bank. The same woman from before recognized my voice. Ms. Davis, good morning. How can I help you today? I need to review all accounts where my name appears, even as an emergency contact. There was a pause, a few keyboard clicks, then a slight tightening in her tone. I see your name was recently re-added to 2 family accounts, checking and auto insurance, both under your parents. Re-added. That word sat wrong in my throat. Without my permission? Yes, ma'am. It seems they listed you for emergency verification. Would you like me to remove that authorization? Yes, I said, and I want a note attached. No new joint activity allowed without my in-person consent. The woman hesitated. Understood. Would you like copies of the changes? I'd like certified copies, I said, and please email a confirmation today. By noon, I had them printed and labeled, each one a brick in the wall I was building. Ethan called during his lunch break. You sound like a lawyer, he said gently. I sound like someone who's done being the scapegoat, I replied. They've been rewriting the rules while pretending to play fair. He paused. So what's next? I looked at the growing pile of documents, letters, and screenshots on my table. Now I write the final message. That night, I opened my laptop and drafted an email with the subject line, Notice of Boundary Enforcement. I typed slowly, deliberately, each word like a nail sealing a door. To my family, effective immediately, I will not be providing financial support now or in the future. Any attempt to use my name, accounts, or signature for financial purposes will be treated as fraud and reported accordingly. Family is about respect. You've made it clear you have none for mine. Paula. Before I could second-guess myself, I added every relative who had called, texted, or checked in. Then I hit send. The reaction didn't take long. Within an hour, the replies poured in like static. Brianna. You've lost it. This is insane. Mom. You don't know what you're saying. We're your parents. Uncle Dean. Family matters aren't legal threats, Paula. You're making a fool of yourself. Only one reply stood out. Dad's. It was empty. Just an attachment. A photo of our family at the anniversary dinner, everyone smiling except me. No caption, no words. Just a reminder of the role I was meant to play. I didn't reply. The following morning, I went for a walk. Cool air, thin light, the city just waking up. My phone stayed at home. I wanted to hear my own thoughts without vibration interruptions. When I got back, there were 12 missed calls and 1 voicemail from a blocked number. The message was short. You think you're clever pulling all this legal crap? You'll regret cutting blood ties. No name, but the tone was familiar. Brianna's fury had a rhythm, a tempo you couldn't mistake. That afternoon, Ethan and I sat on my couch while I organized a folder labeled Family Files, Closed. Inside went every receipt, every screenshot, every statement. He watched quietly before saying, They'll see this as war. I shook my head. No, it's a peace treaty. They just don't realize peace means no access. Later that evening, the next line was crossed. At 5:27 p.m., my work phone rang. It was HR. Paula, we received a call earlier from someone claiming to be you, the HR rep said cautiously. They were asking for payroll and benefits information. We flagged it because the voice didn't match your file recordings. My stomach dropped. Do you know where the call came from? The number was a prepaid cell registered near your parents' area code. We've already locked your file. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall. The silence between breaths was razor thin. They hadn't just invaded my finances, they'd crossed into my identity. By midnight, I'd decided, no more reactions, no more damage control. It was time to end the war they kept pretending was love. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, a friend of Ethan's. His office smelled like paper and rain. When I explained everything, he didn't look shocked. He looked practiced. You'd be surprised how often families do this, he said. He drew up new documents, updated estate plan, leaving everything to charity and a trusted friend. Revoked power of attorney for all family members. Added fraud alerts to my bank, health, and insurance files. Authorized automatic reports if anyone used my identity or social security number. When I signed, the pen didn't shake. It was clean, deliberate, final, just like the first time. As we packed up, the lawyer said, "Do you want me to notify them?" "No," I said. "Let Discovery do the talking." By the time I got home, the last piece was in motion. I emailed the lawyer's copy to myself, saved it in 3 places, and added a new note to my folder. Status, fully secured, no further contact. That night, I wrote one final message to the family thread. There is nothing left to discuss. Then I powered off my phone and placed it in a drawer. For 3 days, the world was blissfully quiet. No guilt, no tears, no calls pretending to be check-ins. Just the soft, strange silence of a life unmonitored. But peace is never permanent in families like mine. On the 4th day, a new voicemail appeared. Dad's voice, thin and tired. "Paula, call me back. It's urgent." I didn't. Some part of me already knew what came next. The collapse wasn't coming. It had already started. I didn't listen to the rest of Dad's voicemail. I didn't have to. The word urgent in my family didn't mean emergency. It meant leverage. 2 days later, a text from my cousin Michelle popped up. "Heard your parents are in trouble with the bank again. Maybe it's time to stop being stubborn?" No hi, no warmth. Just another attempt to guilt me into becoming their solution. I didn't reply. That night, I got home to find the light on my answering machine blinking. One new voicemail. A man's voice, unfamiliar, cheerful, in that customer service kind of way. "Hi, this is Thomas from Silverline Credit. We're calling to confirm your co-signature on the Davis family mortgage application. Please call us back before noon tomorrow." My hands went cold. They had tried again, reapplying with my name without permission. Within the hour, I was in my car, driving through light rain toward my lawyer's office. The city was a blur of reflections. Stoplights, storefronts, my own face in the windshield. I remember thinking how strange it was. The freedom that comes when you realize you owe nothing to the people who once defined you. When I got there, my lawyer listened carefully, then nodded. "You already warned them in writing. Now we document the violation and file a fraud notice with both banks. It'll flag their applications automatically." "Can we also block my name from being added to any account?" "Yes," he said, "permanently." I signed a few more forms. The sound of the pen dragging across the paper felt like armor being fitted. Then, for the first time in weeks, I exhaled without shaking. When I got home, I drafted one more email. This time not to family, but to every institution they might try next. To whom it may concern, my legal team has confirmed repeated unauthorized use of my name and identity in financial documents connected to the Davis family. Any application or contract bearing my signature or information should be considered fraudulent. Please direct any verification requests through my attorney of record. By midnight, I'd copied every agency and bank I could think of. I added the confirmation receipts to my closure folder and sat back, staring at the quiet glow of the screen. It was done. I had shut every door they could possibly pry open. At least that's what I thought. The next morning, HR from my office called again. "Paula, we had another issue." I froze. "What now?" "Someone called pretending to be you. They asked for your tax records. They said they were filing your paperwork on your behalf. The number traces back to a burner phone near your parents' town." The air left my lungs. "Did they get anything?" "No," she said. "We've locked your file and alerted IT security. You might want to file a police report." When I hung up, my reflection in the dark screen looked different. Not frightened, just resolved. Ethan showed up an hour later, holding 2 coffees. "They've crossed the final line, haven't they?" "They have," I said, "and I'm crossing mine." We spent the rest of the afternoon changing everything. Passwords, PINs, email recoveries, security questions. I set up fraud alerts, updated every legal and financial contact, and signed power of attorney documents that transferred emergency control to my lawyer instead of family. The next morning, a courier delivered a thick envelope, final notarized copies of my legal paperwork. I flipped through each page. Estate, all assets to charity. Executor, independent trustee, not related by blood. Power of attorney, removed all family names. Emergency contacts, Ethan and one friend. Fraud clause, permanent restriction on any use of my identity by immediate relatives. Each document bore my initials, PD, my handwriting, sharp, deliberate, unapologetic. When I finished, I called my lawyer. What happens if they try again? He didn't even hesitate. Then it's criminal, not personal. The distinction hit me harder than expected, not personal. After a lifetime of being family currency, I was officially no one's resource. That evening, I sent one last message to the family group chat. No anger, no explanation, just 6 words. There is nothing left to discuss. Then I muted the thread, permanently. For the first time in years, my phone stayed silent through dinner. No calls, no guilt, no emotional fire drills. Ethan and I sat on the balcony, the city glowing below us. He reached over, brushed his thumb against my wrist. "You look lighter," he said. "I am," I said. I finally unsubscribed from their chaos. He smiled, quiet and proud. "You know they'll spin it, right? You'll be the villain in every version they tell." I know, I took a sip of coffee. Let them. Villains have boundaries. Saints get drained. We stayed outside until the streetlights flickered off, until the morning birds replaced the sirens. When I went inside, I opened my laptop one last time. I renamed the folder Proof of Peace. Then I dragged it into a hard drive and locked it away. It was over, or at least I thought so, until 6 months later, when the universe sent one final confirmation. 6 months later, the silence broke. It wasn't sudden, more like a door creaking open after too long in the dark. A single voicemail appeared one morning, time-stamped 7:42 a.m. The voice was my father's, thin and frayed. "Paula, please call me back. It's important." He didn't say urgent this time. Important. That was new. But I still didn't call. Later that day, my phone buzzed with a message from an old neighbor back in my parents' neighborhood. "Just a heads up, your parents' house has a for sale sign out front. Looks like the bank's involved." I didn't need more details. I already knew how this story went. When you build your life on someone else's credit line, the collapse is only ever a matter of time. That evening, curiosity got the better of me. I typed their address into a property site. Status: foreclosed. Listing photos showed the familiar living room, stripped bare. No framed family portraits, no glass cabinets, no staged perfection. Just pale walls and light stains where furniture once hid the truth. A message from Brianna arrived next, short, bitter. "Hope you're happy. They lost everything." For a long moment, I stared at the screen. Then I set the phone down and whispered, "Finally, they lost what wasn't theirs." 2 days later, another update came, this one from my lawyer. "Just letting you know, Paula," he said. "Someone tried to add your name to a new loan application last week. The system flagged it instantly. The fraud report went through and the bank blacklisted the applicants." He paused. "They won't be able to open anything major in their names again for at least 5 years." I thanked him quietly. When I hung up, the weight I'd carried, that constant vigilance, that background tension, began to dissolve. Slowly, gently, like a long exhale you didn't realize you'd been holding since childhood. For weeks after, there was only silence. No calls, no family emergencies, no sudden, "we need you" messages. Just stillness. Ethan noticed it first. "You're different," he said one night as we ate on the balcony. "How?" "You're not listening for your phone anymore." I smiled. "That's because there's nothing left to hear." He reached for my hand. "You think they'll ever try again?" "Maybe," I said, "but now they'll find the door locked, and my name isn't on the key." He smiled, then looked away toward the city lights. "You did the hardest thing most people never can. You stopped being their safety net." I nodded. I stopped being their story. One evening, while cleaning my desk, I found the old closure drive. I plugged it in, just once. The folder opened. Receipts, screenshots, letters, bank statements. Evidence of a lifetime's imbalance. I clicked through them slowly, not with anger anymore, just quiet understanding. Every file was proof of something I'd survived. Then, one by one, I deleted them. Not out of forgiveness, out of freedom. That night, as I lay in bed, a memory surfaced. That dinner. 6 months ago, Brianna raising her glass with a smirk, Mom's laugh echoing off the restaurant walls, Dad looking away. For the first time, it didn't hurt. It just felt distant, like an old photograph from a life I no longer lived in. The next morning, Ethan handed me a letter that had arrived in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. My mother's. I opened it slowly. Inside, a single page. "Paula, we didn't know how much we relied on you until we couldn't anymore. Your father isn't well. Brianna's struggling. We've made mistakes, but so have you. Maybe one day we can start over. Love, Mom." No apology. Just equilibrium, the kind that assumes the damage was mutual. I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and set it in the drawer where I keep things I don't need but can't quite throw away. Then I took a deep breath and whispered to the quiet room I already started over. Weeks passed. Seasons changed. My parents moved into a small rental on the outskirts of town. Brianna sold her car, then her jewelry, then her silence. A mutual friend mentioned in passing that they were doing okay, considering. I wish them no harm. I wish them growth, but from a distance. The safe kind of love that doesn't cost your peace. Ethan and I took a short trip that spring. Nothing grand, just a coastal town where no one knew our names. On the last night there, he asked, "Do you ever feel guilty?" I thought about it for a while, watching the tide roll in. "Guilt's what they trained me to feel," I said finally. "But peace I had to teach myself." He smiled. "So, the Bank of Paula Davis?" I laughed softly. "Permanently closed. No reopenings, no new accounts." The next morning, we packed our bags and drove home under a pink dawn. The world felt simple again. Not perfect, just mine. And as the radio played something slow and hopeful, I thought about everything I'd lost and realized it was nothing compared to what I'd reclaimed.